Hello, people of the internet. First things first, I just want to say sorry for my brilliant upload schedule. Don't know what you're talking about. Anyways, you have clearly clicked on this video to learn how to do a D-tap. You've probably seen some of your favorite YouTubers do it, such as Rascalin, and have always wondered how to do it. Well, this is your go-to place for a simple guide on how to perform a D-tap. This video will be split up into 3 different sections. 1. The fundamentals of the D-tap. This will be how it works and the logic behind it. I would highly recommend that you don't skip this part, as the rest of the video will just make no sense to you. But if you don't care at all, or you already know how it works, then skip it. The second segment will be how to perform a D-tap and some easy tips and tricks to help you learn it that I used. Last part will be mastering and implementing it into your gameplay. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Section 1. The fundamentals. If you are not very into the sciencey stuff, don't worry. I won't pull wifeys on ya. Like, what is this? God damn, it's so complicated. Don't worry, I'll be nice and simple. The first step to understand how a D-tap works is understanding what a damage tick is. Damage ticks start when you take damage in any way, and end after half a second. Most people just recognize this when a player, mob, or NPC goes red after they take damage, like so. During each damage tick, you'll only take damage once, and it'll be from whatever does the most damage to you, not what hits you first. For example, let's say that I have 5 players hitting me. One of them is critting me out with an iron sword, and the other 4 players are punching me. It might not seem like it, but only the iron sword will do damage to me. The punches will do nothing except for break my armor more. This is why you don't see people instantly dying when they are in, say, a massive group of zombies, or in a 4v1 situation in sword player versus player epic combat. To put it into an example in a crystal duel, if I start to spam crystals right as my enemy is against a wall, watch how fast they pop compared to how fast they crystal. As you can see, it is only once every damage tick, or 2 times in a second. That's pretty much all that you need to know about how D-tapping works, unless you don't know how crystal works. If so, you should either watch the tutorial that I made, which admittedly isn't the best, or look one up. That's all of the boring stuff done, now onto the more exciting stuff. Section 2. How to actually perform it. Now for the fun, but also hard part. Be warned that to get consistent at this, it won't happen overnight or just in a few weeks. Like learning any new skill, such as guard bridging or touch typing, it takes time to master. Now that is out of the way, let's get into it. If you can already hit crystal with about 75% accuracy or more, this part is pretty easy. If you can't, that's okay. Now, to D-tap, you need to make use of how damage ticks work. Using our knowledge of them, you might be able to see where I'm going with this. If you take 5 hearts of damage at the end of a damage tick, then another 5 hearts at the start of the next damage tick, you might die nearly instantly. Using this trick is how a double tap works. Step 1 is starting a damage tick in any way, shape, or form. The most common of which is by a sword or a punch. Step 2 is to place your obsidian while they are in the air. If you're going to use pre-placed obsidian, get your crystals out, because you got to use them. Step 3 is placing the first crystal but not exploding it just yet. You can always wait to place the crystal if it's easier for you, like I do, or you can get it done nice and early. Step 4 is the hardest one of them, and that is exploding the first crystal at the correct timing, hopefully popping your enemy's totem. This time is nearest to the end of that first damage tick that you started with your sword. Just to assist maybe with some timing, this might help if you get it in your head. Both lava and the void damage you at the speed of a damage tick, So if you keep this in mind, it might help you. Step 5 is to place and explode your second crystal just after the first damage tick ends. That's literally it. Simply, what you just did is you started a damage tick. Because you can only take damage from one source, this being whatever does the most damage to you, we exploited this feature. By exploding your first crystal at the end of the damage tick, your enemy will hopefully pop for the first time. And then at the end of the damage tick, you crystal again, starting another damage tick and killing them nearly instantly. If we made a timeline of what just happened, it would look somewhat like this. 0.00 seconds, you hit the player with a sword, you punch them, whatever you can do to knock them into the air or make them start a damage tick. From 0.01 till about 0.49 seconds, you're placing your obsidian. I would say about a quarter to half of a second through, you're placing and exploding your first crystal. Now, this might sound really fast, but you gotta trust me, it's not. Everything sounds fast when it's really not. Just after that, so 0.51, so probably about 0.75 you want to do, you're placing and exploding your second crystal. The longer between your first and second crystal, the easier it is to do, but the much easier it is to survive. Some tips and tricks that I use while learning is to start off just by learning the crystal timing and not bothering about anything else. I did this by just loading up a flat single player world and trapping a zombie in a 2x1 box, with only one gap left. This zombie was summoned to hold in 64 totems. The command looks like this, and just to make your lives easier, I even put it in the description for you. I then gave myself resistance 5 using this command. Then, I hit the zombie and did the 2 crystals like this. If you have done it very fast and correctly, you should hear something about like this. If you have done it slowly, you should hear something like this. As long as you hear 2 totem pops happen at a relatively fast speed, you've done it correctly. If the zombie runs out of totems and it dies, just summon another one. I started off slowly, and then started to gradually speed up. I did this for a few hours, and then started to do it on some players. Once I got the hang of using pre-placed obsidian, mostly through fighting people in holes in a desert 1v1, I went back onto that original super flat world. I then gave myself obsidian and started to practice on a zombie that isn't trapped. I found this much harder to do. Again, start off really slowly. Here's a screenshot of what that world looks like now after I've done that. As you can see, I've done it a lot. Moving on, what I found, and I actually still do this trick, is that the mindset that I have as I go into do a DTAP has a massive difference on how accurate and how well I perform it. What I mean by this is if I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to go for a butterfly, meaning that I have plenty of time, I can move slower, don't need to be stressed about anything, I get probably about 75% accuracy for my hit crystal and DTAP. Of course I don't go for a butterfly, I do a DTAP, but it doesn't really matter. If I think I'm going to go for a DTAP, so I need to move fast, my fingers they become stressed, I end up kind of panicking a bit, and I either mistime the DTAP, or I just don't get the obby in at all. I only get probably about 10% of these. My last useful trick for you guys today, strafe to the side of a player when you hit them. It just makes it easier and less cluttered when you're placing your obsidian. This also makes it harder for you to get hit yourself. I recommend that you practice your DTAPs in whole fights at first for your pre-placed obsidian, and then start going to box to get your obby placement down. This just about wraps it up for this section, so on to the next one. Section 3. Using it in your gameplay. Overusing D-taps can lead to you being very predictable and can make your D-taps less effective and easier to survive. The most important thing about actually using D-taps is making sure that your opponent is not on full health or kinda nearish to full health. This is because if they're on full health, they will only pop on your second crystal, which is really annoying. Lowering your opponent's health can be done with a sword, or any means to do damage to them. I personally prefer to butterfly my opponents, just so I can confirm that they're low by actually popping one of their totems. That's just a little thing, I've done it way too many times, I've just forgotten to get them low. Next thing, one of the most forgotten tricks in Crystal PvP is D-tapping on ledges in whole fights. Like, almost nobody does this. Let's say you hit your opponent onto a higher surface. Don't start spamming crystals. Instead, what you should do is punch them first to start that damage tick, and then do a D-tap on them instead. This will either double pop them, or kill them. This is much better than that one pop you would have otherwise gotten. Last thing for this quick segment is just to make sure to not D-tap yourself. I've done this a few times and it's actually really funny because you both die, but it's not a good thing. Just make sure that you're on the ground and you should be fine. That just about sums it up for this segment. Moving on. Wow. Now, after just a little practice, or maybe a lot, depends on what kind of learner you are, you can D-tap like a pro. It's quite astonishing, isn't it? I just want to say how much effort I put into these videos. The script I'm reading right now is over 1,500 words long, which for me is pretty long. So it would mean the world to me if you liked and subscribed. Anyway, moving on from that shameless self-promotion, have a good day and have fun D-tapping.